Two more things. Letters to the board that are anonymous. I would like staff to know that if somebody doesn't sign their name to a letter, I am not giving it any credence. I understand that it is a part of public record, but I'd like to say publicly, if you can't put your name to a letter, if it were up to me, I would shred it without even reading it. And finally, we've talked about this, but never made a decision. We're supposed, I know some of us want to meet as a board after the board meetings to discuss pluses and minuses, pluses and deltas. Can we come to some kind of an agreement that we will start to do that as of today? Or do we want to continue to just complain about it and never do anything about it? Sorry, that's my nice way of asking us to do something about it.
Was the intent to meet after the evening board meeting?
Correct.
And then the pluses and deltas would be related to both?
Correct, yes. So I guess I want board consensus on whether we're going to start, I mean, it doesn't violate sunshine because we've already made decisions, and it gives us an opportunity as a board to come together as teammates, and we can talk about each other's positives, which is always a good thing, and then make sure the negatives don't happen again. What say you?
Well, I think that some of us have been filling out the pluses and deltas sheet each meeting, and there hasn't been any discussion since the onset of the idea, so I think that we need to come to some consensus, either yay or nay. I mean, I'm more than willing to do it. I think that little bit of communication for 10 minutes after the meeting can be valuable, and that's my input.
I'm supportive.
Yep, me, yay.
I think if the board wants to do it, I'll be there. Like I said, we tried it before. We didn't get full buy-in. To me, I think it's pretty obvious as a board, you know, if they have the pluses and minuses, you can read the thing. I don't know if we need, you know, a group afterwards. We have issues of the sunshine, plus it just delays a day that we've already started at 2 o'clock until 9 o'clock. And, you know, sometimes it gets to be a little bit late. So, but if everybody wants to, I'll endure it, you know, and participate. But to me, I'm not a fan.
I wasn't on the board when we did it before. I do like the written pluses and minuses, and I have not participated in the verbal conversation afterwards, but like Mr. Twyber, I would be willing to try it and see what happens.
Well, I don't think there's any point in doing pluses and minuses if you don't have a conversation. What works, and, you know, does everybody agree with one individual's comment about what went well? And I think sometimes the deltas have been used to make comments about other board members, but there's been no conversation. So, you know, sometimes I've filled it out and sometimes I haven't, because it frustrates me that we don't have the conversation. So as far as I'm concerned, if we do it, we have to do it as a conversation. If we can't have the conversation, then I think we should just abandon it and go back to talking in workshops about whatever.
Okay, so it's a date after tonight's meeting,
All right,
right?
Yep.
right, in the next room, kitchen area? Okay. All right, is that all?
Yeah, that's it, sorry.
Mr. Twyber?
The only thing I really had nothing to add, except Ms. Patrica made a comment about Estero, and it's funny, you know, when Clayton went down there, it was a given. He said, I'm going to take that school and it's going to be the flagship of Lee County. And he said it was it wasn't being boastful, it wasn't being arrogant, it was being Clayton. Yeah, it was being determined. And he said it and he meant it, and every aspect of that campus he owned. And he said, I take full responsibility, everything the way it is and the way it's going to be, and we're going to be there. And I think he's done just a fantastic job. To that end, I think, and Reggie's not here, so I'll pass along to Dr. Atkins. For that little flooring area, you know, we've got new schools going in, and we got a lot of vendors that want to put in some flooring. There's a great spot that they can give us a free comp and say, here's our latest technology, and do it for Clayton for free. So, you know, I think if Reggie used a little bit of muscle, we got some big dollar contracts going in, and these contracts, they should be falling all over each other saying, hey, let's put in our latest and greatest in a place that really we don't have the funds for, but then we use it as a showcase and we can parade our CAC through there and so on and so forth. So I think we need to be a little bit more proactive. You know, Ms. Patrica also said, Chris talked about Tropic Isles. I like Tropic Isles when they won the award, when they did the Sterling presentation, and they did that through the kids, all the students having their performance boards. And that culture never has left Tropic Isles. We went through administrative changes, but they've always kept true to that culture of academic excellence, that the students set their own short-term, long-term gains, and I really appreciate that. And what they've also done is they've actually went out, as is Bonita Elementary, and there's a lot of schools that we can name that actually go out and actively pursue funds and things that they need to the community. And one of the things I'd like to maybe get a little acquiescence or approval to go look for, but Collier at one time, and I don't know if they still have it, but they had a software program that it was available that people could just look if they wanted to give something to the school district. They could just say, I have this to give, and they could just put it on the web, and schools could go, hey, I want that. Or there was a need, a third grade, teacher said, I need marshmallows and toothpicks for a science project. They would put out what they need, and people could search by way of school, by way of grade, by way of, a bunch of different ways. We can parse up the search mechanism a bunch of different ways. And as you talked about with Trey, we've got the people to do that type of thing, to put direct connections for people that just want to do something for a science class. They have a passion in science or a passion in music, to say, what does certain teachers need, and give them exactly what they need, with a whole lot less of red tape that we have to go through right now to get resources to our teachers and to our schools. So I think that we as a board, I'd be willing to champion some of that effort, but I know the whole board feels passionate about that we need to get more resources in the classroom. And I have to tell you, there's a whole lot of people that ask me, what can I do? And we really don't have a method to make it done efficiently. So I'd like that to be a little bit of a push. That's something that we need to do, and we keep talking about it when it happens, but we can really amp that up a lot. So that's all I have.
Place for our website. Great activity. Ms. Morgan.
Yeah, let's see, we've talked about construction advisory. Golden Apple was, as always, a wonderful event celebrating our teachers who represent all of the teachers in the district. And I personally enjoyed going to the Hyatt instead of all the way up to Harborside. But I thought it was a wonderful event. I went to the Barnes & Noble, I won't say, Barnes & Noble asked kids to submit essays about teachers who had an impact on them, made a difference. And they selected, I believe it was 6, and I think there were 2 middle and 4 high school, and I didn't get the list that I have asked for. But anyway, the kids stood up and they read their essays and won one. And the kids were given like gift certificates to Barnes & Noble and whatever. And the winner goes on to a state and national competition. I said to Dr. Atkins yesterday, boy, it would really be nice if one of those kids got up to read an essay, just, when we do the recognitions at the beginning of the board meetings, because there were such heartfelt recognitions. And the other thing that really struck me was that I believe 5 were for math, 5 referred to math teachers, and 1 referred to a music teacher. So it's my reaction was, it's the really tough to teach subjects where kids really struggle, that teachers really have an impact, and kids, that's what kids remember. So anyway, that was just a great experience. And again, as you've said, Mr. Teuber, there are a lot of people in the community doing stuff for our kids and for our schools, and we have no clue. We're not in a position to say thank you for what you do. So anyway, that's it for my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to Mr. Martin.
Yes, Dr. Cook, board members, just a couple of issues. With respect to the discussion of plus and minuses after a regular school board meeting, one of your 2 attorneys will need to be there just to be sure that you're in compliance with Sunshine Law, because it does provide some level of limitation with respect to that discussion. You need to avoid discussing any matter that you may have to take a vote on in the future. Generally, I don't think that the subjects that you would want to discuss at that time would fall within that category, but just for example, if you wanted to discuss a particular component of the process by which you conduct school board meetings that's addressed in policy, that's a subject you would have to avoid. So One of your two attorneys will be there just to guide you through that process, help in that respect.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a school law minute, if I may. And
Yeah.
seeing the late hour, I will
Please
try to
do.
make it brief. You'll recall that we were discussing parliamentary procedure, and the specific subject I wanted to address today is changing the main motion. After the school board chair has stated the main motion, that is when Ms. Fisher states motion by Mr. Teuber, second by Ms. Patrica, after that occurs, the motion now belongs to the assembly, so it can only be changed through the formal process of a motion to amend. Before it is stated, an individual member can suggest minor changes to the maker of the motion, and the maker can accept or refuse those changes. That's sometimes called a friendly amendment. Additionally, the member making the motion can, on his or her own initiative, change the wording of the motion. In either event, the member seconding must also agree to the change, or a new second is required. Now, after the motion has been stated by the chair, that is, after Ms. Fisher states motion by, second by, at that point, a motion to amend is required in order to change the main motion. A motion to amend is debatable. That is, after it's made, the school board can discuss it before a vote. The motion to amend requires a second and requires a majority vote. The motion to amend must be germane. That is, it must be closely related to the main motion. It must involve the same question. Adoption of the amendment by a vote in favor of the motion to amend changes the form of the main motion as proposed, but it doesn't adopt the motion thereby amended. Action to adopt the main motion is still required. So after the motion to amend passes, the next step is to go back to the main motion, continue any further discussion that's needed, and then take a vote on that main motion. Rejection of the amendment by a vote against the motion to amend leaves the main motion worded as it was before the amendment was proposed. You still must return to the main motion for a vote. So if the motion to amend is rejected, it does not pass, the next step is to go back to the main motion, receive any further discussion, and then proceed to a vote on that main motion. That's all I have today.
I'm just glad you sit at the table while we do that.
Dr. Kuckel, may I?
Yes.
Mr. Martin, you made me realize that I wasn't super clear. I anticipated everybody who's on that list that we have been completing for the pluses and deltas would be present at the meeting, you and Dr. Atkins included.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Atkins?
No comments, other than I feel much better now having heard that explanation. I have no comments.
I think we all do. We will now move to good of the order. Board members, do you have any good of the order items? If not, I will announce that at 5:45, Tropic Isles Elementary School will be performing right here, and our evening meeting will begin at 6 o'clock, and this board briefing is adjourned.